Much. This is it. This is the max interview. Let's go, dude.
Excellent.
I've seen the first five minutes or so.
First time we're actually meeting. I don't think we've ever actually spoken before. I know you mentioned in a couple other interviews you had seen some of my videos and talked about it with like the AMZ thing, which is pretty funny.
Yep. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Thank you for giving us the ammunition to make some changes we wanted to make. It's always appreciated.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. They're going to be mad about that, but that's yeah. But, yeah. So I just want to get right into it because we have like a pretty limited amount of time. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is actually season 4. So I think, first of all, the community loves it. At best, I think it's a great new idea that can, revolutionize the end of expansion's gameplay. Very worst, honestly, is just objectively better than a super long season 3. So
yeah,
basically,
a lot of there was initial feedback where I saw just from our server, right? Obviously, you can only see the server, and granted, it's basically oceanic because yes, we get people from Thorison and stuff like that. I think when season 4 was announced, there was a lot of talk about, but it's just blah, blah, blah. And yeah, the whole worst case scenario, it is literally just better. Like, there's no other way to put it. This is tangibly just way better than not having anything. And yeah, like the fact you can snipe a piece of gear is literally in every way, shape, and form currently better than what you previously had. But yeah, I guess maybe it was just the vocal minority that like to doomsay about everything, right? But since season 4's come out, I think most people are pretty on board with it. Though I am starting to notice, again, it might just be the realm, the guild, whatever the case may be, but even just outside of just the guild, just general impressions as you go about the day and play, it does feel as if maybe the couple of weeks in, we've had our 3-week rotation now, and we're back on Castle Nathria again. It feels as if there's still that tapering off. I'd love to see the numbers and the metrics of who's completing what as it goes on, because I definitely noticed gearing is way faster this time. The whole release the hounds thing, where obviously Valor's uncapped now, Conquest is uncapped. I actually need to do more PvP actually. And yeah, just in general, everything's obviously super flowy, where you just get gear thrown at you. Granted, yes, there's that whole debacle about how raids are still locked out, and yes, you get the dinar, but it's nowhere near the same as Mythic Plus, so you can just yeet and delete everything in the, blah, blah, blah ranks. And then because Valor's uncapped, you can just upgrade everything once you get your IO score up. Like, yes, Mythic Plus has a way easier time at gearing up to a higher potential than raiding does as well. Like, I definitely do not think that a Mythic Plus 15 is the same as doing Mythic raiding. Like, a Mythic Plus 15 is way easier, and your reward is a guaranteed 3 or 4 at the end of the week for your vault, and then all your, I think it's 288 gear that you can then upgrade to 298, I believe. The last 2 little upgrades I'm pretty sure you get, or maybe 296 or something. But either way, it's like Mythic Plus has a way easier time for gearing up at the moment. So I do think that now that the rating in general has they've each done their week cycle, and we're back on Castle Nathria. Mythic Plus I don't think has dropped, and I do think rating scenes tapered off a lot. Yeah.
What are some of your thoughts about season 4, and if you've had any time during Dragonflight to think about maybe if it could be brought back or improved upon?
Yeah, thank you for those thoughts, those reactions. I think it's been overall super happy with how it's played out. Definitely, some bumps the first week, especially with scaling issues. We never really used that tech at this scale before, so we had to work out some of the kinks in the system there. But I think we went into this hoping that it would play out largely the way it had, and if it did, that this could become something that we go to in the future at the very end of an expansion. Just kind of in those last few months,
I like
everyone
that.
knows the next expansion's on the horizon.
Yeah.
You finish the story, you finish the current expansion's content. It's just kind of a remix and a chance to revisit kind of the greatest hits of the expansion as a whole. Tuning has been definitely something we've been looking at. Like, I think now that people have more gear,
I wonder if they will plan on intentionally. Alright, I say intentionally, it's a hard kind of word to justify it, but I wonder if there's any plans, or if just internally they're discussing the option when they do this kind of greatest hits season finale essentially, whether they might intentionally make it easier, because one, it's bosses that you already cleared, so there's no like competition per se. It's just do it for the fun of it. And it's clear that they make it gearing easier, because I think it's kind of cool to kind of go, whatever I achieved before, now my gearing route is a lot easier, so you can sort of get the joy of experiencing Biss quicker and just, yeah, go nuts. Cool, you got your gavel, you got your Jathus, you're popping off in unreal ways that you never got to experience before. Yeah, enjoy it. It's the last few months of, you know, the expansion anyway. It's fun. I wonder whether they'll intentionally, in part and parcel of doing that, make the actual raids tuned easier than they were the first time around, just to try and get more people encouraged to do raiding and stuff like that. Not the worst thing in the world. Like, I don't see any issue with it. But yeah, they definitely need to do something to revitalize the raiding scene, because it's just losing to Mythic Plus. Like, Mythic Plus was such a great addition, and it was like, cool, you got your raiding as your PvE, but then this new dungeon thing just helps fill in the gaps, and it's really cool and fun. Shortcut, like 4 years down the line, you know, a couple of expansions along, guarantee you Mythic Plus is the primary PvE and game content. Like, I wholeheartedly believe, if you got the numbers and whatnot, Mythic Plus is the central core PvE pillar by a country mile, and then raiding is this other side thing that, you know, some people obviously do. And yes, raiding has a lot of that, like, world first hype around it and everything like that, but I really see Mythic Plus being the dominant sort of end game for people. And I think it's kind of based on just the gaming sphere in general, right? I feel like maybe in the last 5 to 10 years, probably more 5 years or so, there's been a shift where people just, whether it's the busyness of lives or whatever, or just the gaming scene in general, it's a big push to that pick up and play half an hour to 40-minute sort of gameplay loop with some seasonal long-term progression. You think Fortnite, half an hour-ish game. You think League of Legends, 20 to 40-minute games usually when you play Summoner's Rift. Even if you play other game nodes, Aimgram, like 15 to 20 minutes. It's this short block segment that you get to play whatever time. And Mythic Plus literally just fits right into that. You get your half an hour, well, essentially your 20-minute to 40-minute range. Yes, some are obviously longer. Yes, it's a matter of whether you blast it or fail to time, whatever the case may be. But again, the premise is the same, right? You've just got these block segment content that leads to still some overall progress, which being your seasonal IO, that naturally gets you different upgrades as you go along as well, which helps you complete those block segment content better. Whereas raiding is still obviously this big, long, arduous thing. Honestly, they need to make raiding less of this big epic adventure. It's just not what MMOs... It's what MMOs should be, don't get me wrong, and that content should exist in some fashion, but I just don't think you can expect the raiding scene to flourish again while trying to maintain massive amounts of ad trash and stuff, running all the way back to bosses. Like, there's just so many little 1% things that they could fix that would make raiding so much better.
Pretty happy with where that's landed, and we definitely heard a lot of feedback, especially the first couple of weeks, from like Hall of Fame and Cutting Edge, but not like not guilds like your guild, that it felt too much like reprogression. And it's like then we go look at logs and realize, like, look, you guys wiped like 5 times, then killed the boss. Like, that's not really progression, but I get it, right? Like, it feels like you've already learned this fight. It feels like you've already killed the boss. You expect to just go in and win, but we want there to be a little bit of a challenge. So I think overall it's played out pretty much the way we wanted to.
All right, great, yeah. And
I do think that affixes was a smart idea. Some of them are like a bit annoying, but even purely just from a gameplay standpoint of just the Soki boys, I can't remember what it's called. They're all weird names, right? That I just haven't committed to memory yet. But the Soki boys that you get in, and you get the haste buff, I believe, like the little white circles on the ground, and everyone's like, don't forget to soak. And you want to, you're encouraged to do the mechanic because you get such a sick buff for it. And honestly, that just makes the thing fun. Like, even on Deathknights, right? You do some Soki boys, and then you get that haste buff and whatever else it gives you. I just know I attack faster, so I know it's haste in there somewhere. Right as the ads come out, and then you know that that means you've done like your AoE rotation quicker, and it just synchronizes like that, and it just feels good. So little additions like that, even if they're not just curse, but a little bit of kiss, you know, the whole kiss curse thing. It worked really well, honestly, especially for that final send-off. I think that's something I'd like to see kept for affixes and stuff. They just need to get rid of this, like how much of an arduous process raiding is. Like, it'd be so good to be like, hey, we're gonna do this raid and whatnot, and we know we need to commit an hour to it tonight. And an hour would be so much nicer if you know you're going, cool, we want to try and get these bosses done. Very minimal trash between him. If you die, you go straight back to the boss entrance room. You can skip to whatever bosses you need to do, so you don't have to sit there sillily going, oh, well, you know, we've got to kill these 7 even though we're up to progressing on 8. And just, yeah, I don't know. There's so much they could do to really help streamline it.
Outside of the actual gameplay element of faded affixes and raids, were a lot of the like loot acquisition systems. So you had to create a few new unique ones because of the way the raids would be rotating. But I kind of wanted to ask you about them. So like Dinar and the upgrade essences from Heroic and Mythic, like I said, I think they're excellent.
Super cool for the upgraded ciphers as well. Being able to cipher like an LFR item and boost it up obviously gets more people in LFR, but I could make an entire video on how much I hate LFR. And it's not because I'm just like a, you know, hate LFR Andy because everyone's bad and why did the people blah, 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 blah. I think there's at least something to be said to be able to have a discussion, and I'm perfectly willing to admit I'm going to be wrong on said discussion, but if raiding was originally done as like, this is cool, your best in stock gear, but then you wanted to encourage the other people that could never really get to that level because of time commitments or skill issues, whatever the case may be, and so they feel left out because they don't get to experience blah, 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 blah. Cool, that's fine. There's other avenues, especially coming into Dragonflight now, that give them the capability of getting so much better gear that I don't understand why LFR exists still. And even if you want to keep it in, one, I think 4 raid tiers is redundant. They can merge LFR and normal. Just call it normal. Get rid of LFR. Just call it normal, but make normal queuable. So the whole point is there's still queues there. Sure, maybe you need to make it a little bit harder than LFR, but a little bit easier than current normal. I don't know. But the point is, anyone that does normal, like LFR and normal could just be one and the same, honestly. Whether a guild wants to do it as a set unit, that's fine, or make it queuable, vice versa, it doesn't matter. All part of the same package in the normal raid. Then you can have Heroic and Mythic beyond that, that's fine. I'd love to see them shrink raid size down to, or raid difficulties down to 3 instead of 4. And I wish LFR did more to help train people or teach people to be better at the game, or encourage people to be better, because I even did an LFR yesterday on stream, and it was really bizarre having a situation where you can see other mechanics and it obviously yells at you and it's like, oh, don't stand there, you'll die, blah, blah, blah. But you just never take damage. You can fuck up the mechanics 100 times over and you're going to be fine. So there's no real penalty to it. My off the cuff thought on it was, why don't we make it so your health bar, like you have an unlimited amount of cheat deaths, but if you're still standing in the bad mechanic after the 10 seconds of a cheat death, then you do die. There is consequence. But the cheat death will kick in, so it looks terrible because your bar's gone all the way down to 1 health basically. And then it should have some extra flashy thing that other scenarios don't get, that'll just teach you, cool, hey, by the way, you kind of want to move out of this. I've told you a bunch of times, this is bad. And then if you still don't do it because you're trolling or you're just really that bad at the game, cool, the cheat death wears off and then you get to stand in it. Granted, how do you balance that? Someone could just stand in the fire, wait to 8 seconds or whatever it is, move out of the fire, then stand back in it, and then get another 6 seconds of cheat death. Like, there's clearly gimmicky shit that you could use to ruin the entire experience, right, and make it trivial. But something, like I said, this was just an off-the-cuff thing, but I do think something more needs to be done to use LFR as an avenue of helping teach more people, rather than just an avenue of, there you go, get in there, experience every boss that's available, continue your business. Because LFR currently exists literally as that, and then you obviously get your free loot, so people use it for ults and stuff like that. But I don't know.
Is there a chance that we
definitely
can see
more
a truncated version of this in a regular season that would maybe help with loot targeting? So an idea for that is, like, currently someone could do an entire Mythic Sanctum raid every week and never see a Japhis, maybe. It obviously would have to be much less, but like, what could that look like?
Something like this. For sure, I think kind of like the season, you know, the season structure itself we see this as a time for experimentation, and experiments aren't necessarily going to be carried forward in their exact form, but the idea of like anti-RNG backstops.
It can't be the exact form. I agree with Ian on that.
Guarantee
but
that you will eventually get that chase best in slot item you want. Feels like a useful thing for us to explore. I mean, the dinar system, I think, in terms of how upfront it is and how quickly you're getting something, that is probably way more accelerated than we would ever do in a regular new season. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is like the 3-week rotation means that you just get fewer shots at getting these items. Also, like psychologically, most of these are items that you already had. Like, while it was relevant, you got your Japhis, you got your Sylvanas daggers, whatever.
Some
else.
people didn't know, surely.
In them. I think it would, to some extent, I think more than some extent, I think it would diminish the feeling of chasing after that, like, real trophy item, if just week 3 or week 4 of a brand new tier, maybe even before you like kill the boss that dropped it on a specific difficulty, everyone could just walk in and get their item. But
I think he's right, but I also think that he's sort of, I mean, that's his whole point. It can't be like week 3 or week 4. I completely agree with that. It needs to be such a much more long form thing where, yeah, it might sound bad to say, okay, you have the opportunity of sniping a very particular piece of gear, but instead of on a 3-week rotation where every 3 weeks you get a shot of it, you obviously know every week you're getting a shot of it with the weekly lockout. That's fine. And then combine that to be maybe after 6 weeks, 7, 8 weeks, maybe somewhere to 6 to 8 weeks, I would say, while also getting every single week as a chance to get it, would be a better option. And yeah, I think that could work okay. But yeah, using the go, oh yeah, 3 or 4 weeks, that would just feel bad. That means therefore no, well, of course not. That's the whole point. We're agreeing that it needs to be such a longer form, but it needs to exist in some way, shape or form, because I can guarantee there's at least been one person that has raided like Sanctum religiously on Heroic or Mythic, and because there was no upgrade system with the ciphers back then, they might have gotten it on normal or Heroic, but then never got a chance to either upgrade it to Mythic or ever get it on Mythic. And that's a bit of a bummer. Like, yeah,
like ups and downs, and being excited about a loot jackpot has value, but feeling like you could do all the right things but never get it is definitely a bummer. We want to see what we can do about that going forward.
Sweet, yeah. And I think also you're going to kind of have a little bit of that reintegrated into every season going forward as well, with like the new Mythic Plus pool, right? Like part of you're doing a bunch of new Mythic Plus dungeons, you're also going to see a bunch of new, potentially best in slot or very interesting trinkets and things to try. So you're going to have a lot of more loot to kind of go around.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
Okay.
I actually think there's completely nothing wrong with a lot of that cross-pollination where, you know, some really cool stuff from Mythic Plus is what you want to chase, while, you know, maybe for a Mythic Plus high AoE intensity, you know, big mob pack pools, where whatever the case may be, like if you really want to push crazy Mythic Plus, it'll be interesting if there's, you know, a particular raid tier where there's a certain weapon or a couple of, you know, ring effects or trinkets or whatever that came from a raid, or vice versa. You know, a Mythic Plus trinket happens to be BIS for single target. That's really solid in one particular raid tier. And I don't mind the cross-pollination of encouraging multiple avenues of play. And in saying that, you also just know that PvP just has to be its own beast. I don't think you will ever, we don't want PvP infecting PvE.
Okay, so then another thing, that's it about Season 4. I kind of just wanted to talk to you about like current raid accessibility in WoW. So I've heard you speak a lot about, you know, like people always ask about 10-mans and stuff, and I think I actually really agree with like 20-mans in WoW, with how many specs there are and how vast and variable the different types of combat styles and also the ways that specs deal with that exists. I think 20-man is excellent, but I think there are a lot of things in the game where maybe the barrier of entry could be questioned at that point. So I think the first one I would want to talk about is actually the Mythic Raid lockout currently. So I think this exists where a lot of guilds, let's just say they want to do Prototype Pantheon, and they're looking, there's a guild raid, they don't want to cancel the raid, they need 2 people. Well, it's going to be really hard for someone to sign up for that group maybe if they really want loot from Skolex and Vigilant Guardian, and they're like, I don't want to get myself locked into this group's raid if I'm not going to continue or if we don't kill it. Basically what I'm asking is, do you think maybe the Mythic Lockout is outdated in 2022, and it would maybe help a thriving pug system of more raids being able to happen at the 20-man raid size?
So what I'm hearing is you want to do more splits. Mythic splits, more mount sales.
Now,
all of that.
This is something that always gets brought up to me. That this would honestly be something I dread
Fucking
about it,
shots
but I honestly think a lot
fired.
of stuff that is a side effect where what we do is more crazy, that sounds miserable. I think it could be potentially much better for a lot of other people in the game.
It's true though. Like here's something that I do find interesting. I would be willing to bet that at least 80, if not 90, if not 100, but at least 80% of anyone that's like next level sweaty neckbeard people, so literally top 5 guilds in the world, literally top 5, that do all the split runs or whatever, they're always gonna do the most degenerate thing that they can to get every last inch of a leg up for when the mythic race starts, right? I think that's standard. They're going to do whatever it is they can, no matter whether they like it or don't like it, or no matter its impact on everyone else. So I think a big key of, you know, prospering a good world first race, as well as, you know, making sure the general rating scene is healthy and, you know, across the board from everyone from, yes, LFRs all the way up to, you know, mythics, is you want to try and find a balance of systems or whatever gameplay loops that they can exploit. That is because they're going to do it whether they friggin' hate it and want to kill themselves or not. Like, they will do whatever it takes, right? They might not like it and they might be very vocal about the fact that they don't like it, but you want it to do it so it's not so as detrimental on them, but also with the minimalist amount of impact on the broader community. And so obviously we don't want, you know, cells or myth splits or whatever that makes anyone else that even tries to do it, they, you know, there's this ceiling where, oh, we're also a really good bunch of 20 people, we've got a really tight-knit guild, we're all friggin' awesome, we, you know, happen to have a really good composition, we play our things really well, but because we don't do this extra tiny little 1% or it's not even 1%, this tiny extra effort that they go into where all of a sudden they just put in 80 more hours of rating, that's an exaggeration obviously, but the whole point is because they don't manage 5 characters instead of just the 1, then all of a sudden they're completely whitewashed in terms of their capability of such a short form quick gearing up stage. And yeah, I don't know, just, yeah, whatever the degenerate gameplay that you're going to try and push into, as long as it with the minimal amount of impact on the broader community is what they're going to have to find a loop for, because they're always going to do it. Even if they ban rah, they're just going to find the next highest possible threshold they can go that is allowed. So they're always going to do that. You can't beat them.
So it could be. So I think when you talk about pugs, for sure, you know, the rigid lockout system for Mythic is inconvenient for pugs. But I think at its core, Mythic raid difficulty isn't really meant for pugs. People will pug it later on in the season for sure, especially on bigger servers. Certainly, you know, in season 4 like this, where the fights are much better known, the tuning's more forgiving, sure. But
see, back to an earlier thing I said earlier, where I wonder if season, like the finale season that they're gonna do, whether the tuning would be a little bit easier to try and encourage people to flush through and actually get further than they did the original time. The fact that he just said, yeah, that the tuning's a little bit easier, I'm like, yeah, 100%. I actually think they would intentionally make that finale season easier on everyone, so they get to sort of just blow out as a nice celebratory, easy clear of all the raids with the greatest hits, like he said.
It's one of those things where, like, the lockout is an example of a little bit of healthy friction. We talk about, you know, friction that can have social benefits, like, you know, stuff that was removed when we added Raid Finder, Dungeon Finder back in the day. This is one of those examples in that joining a Mythic raid is a little bit of a commitment. And I could argue that there's an upside for pugs as well, which is that, you know, if you're doing a Mythic Nathria pug, kill Shriekwing, and then suddenly, you know, things aren't going great on Altamore, it's a great reason not to bail on that group. It's a great reason to not have a quarter of the group say, now these guys don't get it, I'm out, I'm gonna find another group, because you're locked for the week. You're together with them.
You have to figure it out.
Yeah, and like that, I think that actually encourages somewhat stronger social bonds, reliance on others. At the same time, you know, I get it if you just want to jump in and get one boss, but I think the downsides to the overall Mythic ecosystem, if we just removed that lockout and made them flex, would outweigh the upsides. And there's a reason why, like, normal and heroic are designed to be much more inherently, right, flexible in structure, pug friendly. That's why those work that way. That's why Mythic still works the old way.
Okay, cool. So no plans to change that. And yeah, the split thing, the split thing would definitely be a very unintended side effect from that. Like the absolute terror of potentially seeing like Scott message and be like, okay, everyone show up tomorrow. We're going to be boosting Mythic Jailer for like 12 hours. So like, I mean, oh my lord, would that be bad? Okay, so I agree with that. Another thing, just along the lines of accessibility. So in VFA, you guys came out with the Hall of Fame with the whole like Horde versus Alliance thing in that expansion. And it became the trigger for cross-realm being available. So the game has seen multiple additions recently to make the game more accessible, so cross-faction being a major one, and then also with the region-wide auction house. Is there any possibility we could get cross-realm at the beginning or earlier in the season in Dragonflight now that the Hall of Fame is less relevant?
Yeah, I do feel like Hall of Fame is a really cool idea, but it didn't do anything to really fix the issue.
Moving in that direction. We did it for Sepulchre before the Hall of Fame was full. I think it's likely we're going to repeat that again for Vault going forward. In general, the game as a whole, I think, is moving at tearing down server boundaries. We want to make more and more things cross-server. I think we recognize, 15 years ago, back in Classic, if you log into Classic today, you have the strength of sort of insular, self-contained communities where you're seeing the same people over and over again, and there's a lot of upsides that offset the downsides of some of these restrictions. I think in the modern game, really, server increasingly feels like restrictions without as much upside. And so we are systematically working at chipping away at all of those divisions. It just takes time. So I think when we get to a point where things like potentially cross-server guilds down the line and so forth are on the table, I think fully cross-server raids from the start will be automatic.
Yeah,
but for now,
I think that's fair.
While we're working towards it, we want to make sure.
I'd love to know, like they keep saying, oh yeah, system limitations or whatever, we're working towards it, blah 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 blah. I wonder how much of an impact whatever engine that this magical thing is running off, right? How much of an impact there is there, because it feels like it's been said for like 10 years at this point, the WoW engine like desperately needs an upgrade or whatever, and they can only really do that with the WoW 2, right? I'm sure there's so much foundational stuff that you can't really just wipe the slate clean and still expect the current game to not be balked without using a lot of its baseline. I don't know, yeah. It will be good to see. I do think that's the inevitable kind of way that the game has to go. Cross-faction, cross-server, cross-everything. Like, just have regions, and then your race is your race. And maybe there is some still content that, plays into the whole faction war thing, and that's fine. If it wants to exist, I think it's cool. It should exist. But overall, in terms of like the content to do, yeah, I can just see it being completely open-ended where anyone can play with anyone as long as you're within your region. I think it's because of latency and shit like that. You definitely want to keep, certain regions clicked in together. I think that's fair. But hopefully that'll just, naturally extend itself to all avenues and all levels of content over the time.
So we're not, pulling the rug out from our existing social structures. And so earlier, but not day one.
Okay. So, and again, just the two more questions basically about raid accessibility. And the main one would be actually talking about something you guys have previously done with cross-faction. I think largely this has been really, really good for the game. Obviously, there's still a few things, like it's a little clunky to invite sometimes cross-faction. And then also there's some situations currently with like raid lockouts. Like if you were to race change previously, like let's say for Skolex, you want to go be Dwarf in your alliance, and that's already fine. Now it's perfectly realistic for you to be able to race change to maybe Blood Elf and still raid with your guild, but it will like brick your mythic lockout. So I think something that can solve this, and something you guys have spoke on before, is basically is there any progress being made to the technical limitation of cross-faction guilds? Is it something maybe mid-expansion or much longer than that, do you think?
There's definitely progress being made. It's something we want to do. It's not really responsible for me to commit to a time frame. I would say I would like us to do it before the next expansion.
Okay.
But it's in the hands of a lot of engineering problem solving, and just a lot of these changes are pulling on a thread in code and systems that have been built to work a certain way for 20 years and realizing like, hey, this is trickier than we expected. It may be easier than we expected. We'll see. But definitely recognize there's some awkwardness as some groups have had people faction change that want to keep raiding together and not being able to share the same guild chat, the same guild repairs, guild bank, etc. Achievements.
Cross-faction guilds are just so inevitable. Like it's not even
the other
funny.
stuff we talked about, I think a lot of those are what I would consider bugs. There's a few that we're working on tracking down specifically with cross-faction whispers or invites. If you're in a group with somebody, if you've replied to the group finder group, if you're trying to reply to a message, like all of that should just work. Anytime it fails to work, that's a bug. Now, but the thing we want to make sure is that, there's some opt-in connection. You're not just getting a whisper from a random, cross-faction person that, ganked you in the outdoor world or whatever. And then also similarly, I think faction change, that's just something we need to change. Like the fact that it stops your lockout is a vestige of how the system was built when, of course, two people of opposite factions couldn't be in the same raid in the same lockout. We just nuked your old one to avoid that collision. We shouldn't be doing that now, but again, that's an example of an old system that needs to be updated.
Sweet. Yeah. Okay. All right, so this is a big one, and this is again, I've heard your philosophy on this multiple times. The WoW has gone through a very long history of going back and forth between bring the player or the class. So last expansion, playing perfectly optimally, there was about 7 spots in a 20-man raid that were basically required with something that you could not really replace with any other class. This expansion so far, again, taking a few liberties, but even leaving a few out, there's a bit closer to 12. Speaking for a not world first or high level cutting edge team who will probably make it work regardless, but more for the 10 to 15 man AOTC level teams that might not have some very powerful buffs or might have to swap classes and like play something that you don't like as much to make.
So this like speaks bang on to our current guild, right? So the issue we're having, and it's not even an issue, we're still clearing ship fine, but keep in mind this is clearing ship fine, the first time that the guild's really coming together with a lot of new people, me being one of the new people jumping in. There's not friction in terms of getting used to each other, but there's definitely growing pains, of course, right? Like, 2 years down the line, if we're still in the same guild, it's tangibly just going to be way better of an experience than it is today because we're just used to each other for 2 years, you know what I mean? We know how to like get shit done, so to speak, and just gel together better. But yeah, we're in this situation where our rating progress, as well as just overall enjoyment and ease of access and little things like that, is so much dramatically impacted by classes we don't currently have. And another video idea that I kind of potentially want to make, and we'll see how we go, because I do want to finish the DK video that I'm currently working on, but I really would like to be able to like genuinely nitpick the shit out of homogenization and what's good and necessary for the game to grow and what's bad and should be avoided. Like, I obviously don't think, look at one extreme, right? I don't want every single class or spec to just get to kit out whatever they want and say, all right, all 13 classes get a battle shout, all 13 classes get a death grip, all 13 classes get a battle res, all 13 classes get a like fucking intellect buff. Of course not. You don't want to like go into an NPC or go in and just click the magical give all raid buffs relevancy button, but it's more than just buffs as well. Got to keep that in mind. So there's a certain utility that is just fucking far superior. Like yes, there's health pots and things like that, but obviously having lock rocks is really useful. Just a warlock in general, again, the utility of gateway and things like that is just phenomenal. I would like to hope we'll eventually get to a day where the runbacks and the trash mobs and the size of raids isn't so long and tedious and assholery that, for example, summons aren't as big of a deal. Not having a warlock like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 bosses deep into a raid isn't a detriment. Yes, they've got certain skips where you zone in and you just go through this portal and it will get you up to this particular part, blah, blah, blah. But it's still tedious, and like having summons is none of those, we don't have a warlock in tonight, right? And we're in that exact position. No warlock, which means no gateways, no lock rocks, no summons. There's a few other classes and certain buffs or debuffs or whatnot that we're missing, but warlock's the main one. So this bang on like directly affects what our guild's currently going through. And that'll change over time, right? Like again, we're a new guild. Of course, there's going to be growing pains in terms of getting recruitments in, things like that. Dragonflight is guaranteed to shake up a lot of shit in terms of just by sheer fact that they're adding Evoker. A lot of people will be wanting to change mains, whether it's to Evoker, whether it's because the certain classes got insane talent tree updates. Yeah, so it's going to be a whole nother reshuffle, that's for sure. But yeah, I think homogenization is necessary, but it really needs to be like carefully dabbled into. Like, I'll give you an example. You can easily come up with some bullshit for every single class to have a death grip. And death grip is a prime example of a utility that is super powerful, but it's really weird that it's on one particular boss, right? And you have some instances where death grip will literally do nothing and mean nothing to the fight, and then others where literally it's game changing and it will just make your life so much easier. And if you don't have a Death Knight, you're handicapped by 20% or something ridiculous like that. Yes, you can come up with a silly excuse for every single class to just thematically have a death grip. Chain pull on a warrior, okay. Righteous hand of come over here person. Shadow priest might have a reverse life grip, so you know, just a talent that simply swaps your life grip to death grip essentially. I don't know, Havoc demon hunter, you put your hand through a demonic portal, grab the dude and yeet him through the portal, and that's, you're gripping him through time and space, right? Cool, sure. Mages, you set up a portal at your spot and his spot, and you like fucking push him through the portal or whatever, and he just falls through it or whatever, right? There's little things like that yeah, thematically you can come up with some reason or rhyme of giving everyone the functionality of what a death grip is. That mob comes here, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's just kind of, there should be more. Like, I don't think everyone should have it. That's bad homogenization. Like I said, you never want a situation where click the button to have a loadout of whatever perfect raid setup you want, but then you get to damage and do the actual fight with whatever class you particularly pick, Fury Warrior, Resto Druid, whatever the case is. But in terms of the actual tangible utility and everything, of course you shouldn't have it. Like, I shouldn't be able to go as a warrior, oh, I need tranquility because we don't have a druid, and so I'll be the trank guy. No, of course not. But there definitely should be a serious discussion and a serious like restructuring and rethought about all the things that a raid entails, from buffs to actual utilities, certain spells, certain things like that, because not only is that going to help guilds that obviously have a smaller bit of unit, you know, smaller crew of people, and it will help fill those spots where certain utilities just makes life so much friggin' easier, but it's also going to give them the power to have way more options for mechanics and stuff. Like, I'm just sure I've heard it before, but obviously death grip either is this, oh my god, it's a like crazy cool thing, or it's irrelevant on this fight, so it doesn't matter. Cool, okay. In that case, if there was a bit more flavor and a bit more homogenization and a little bit more fluency across multiple different you know, classes and specs and everything like that, then we're living in a world where they could start playing into certain mechanics having an impact on how a raid encounter isn't designed, and that would be only a benefit for the game. If they can start going, okay, yeah, now we can really get some cool stuff where this is a dumb mechanic, and of course I don't expect them to actually do this, but I'm imagining a scenario where, let's pretend there's this mob raining fire down, doing all sorts of crazy stuff, but he's behind a shield, so no range damage can get him, and you need a grip to rip him down. The grip works through the shield, but all range damage doesn't, or something like that. And then it's like a boss in the middle and 4 pillars, and he's up high on the pedestal, and there's a magical shield that doesn't mean that no range can damage him, but the whole point is you need to grip him down. And then maybe when you grip him down, it makes the dude land in a very angry splash and does raid damage. So there's achievements for do no grippies down, and it's really hard because they're always raining down AoE and stuff, and so that's like no light Ulduar, like Yogg-Saron for example or something, and then you might grip 1 down, but then the raid AoE damage is manageable, but you know, it's a bit hectic, but you got 1 less person down, you DPS the ad, and then there'll be 1 to do all 4, and you just make sure the raid can heal the AoE damage when it comes down, and that's the easiest way of doing it, right? There's little mechanics and plays like that that can be made, all based around this one little thing that you can just add a bit of sprinkle, a bit of layer. Obviously I'm just coming up with shit off the top of my head, right? But yeah, suddenly this one encounter that could have just been, oh, an ad spawns, you kill the ad, and now you go back to the boss. It's way more engaging to have a system where it's like, cool, there's these ads, so they're always going to be alive, they're always going to be pummeling you with AoE damage, but you have an opportunity with this one particular mechanic that they've given to a few different classes now instead of just one being DK, yeah, you can grip them down. Doing that has obviously got some counterplay in terms of like you need to be ready to do it with certain AoE cooldowns and stuff, but getting them down, you do the damage, cool, that's fine, and you can kill them out, and that means less AoE damage on the group as a whole, but also there's different achievements and encouragement of, you know, trying to figure out, can we power through and leave all 4 of them up, or do we only kill 2, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? Like, just that discussion alone is already vastly superior to just an ad spawns, we switch to the ad and we kill it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's more powerful. I understand a lot of
coffee dye
need to be fully optimal, but yeah. Basically, can you explain your philosophy around raid buffs and how it's differed from X-Back to X-Back, where some classes were not required and now might be?
Yeah, so, okay. Let's see, let me make sure I have
that was a
all
long
of that
question. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, okay. So, like, I mean, so some of it is stuff you mentioned that I've talked about in the past, but I'm thinking in the origins of bring the player, not the class, were like the extreme other end of the spectrum back in late Burning Crusade, where it wasn't just raid buffs, it was a matrix of party buffs. And it was, you know, as people saw in BC raiding, well, you know, you need a rogue in the group with a warrior to give battle shout, the warrior needs Wind Fury or they're bad, and sometimes you'd have somebody who's a good player, plays a class that's theoretically good, but you don't have room for them in your specific raid party matrix, and so they can't contribute. That felt clearly not what we wanted, and we moved away from that steadily. But I think where we're moving back towards is class mattering, making sure that the best raid composition, if you want to be optimal, is one that has representation of all 12, soon to be all 13 classes, and that's, you know, 20-player Mythic raid format supports that. I think that's something that is friendly for pugs as well in a flex raid setting. Like, if you're a pug leader, you're trying to recruit the optimal group, get a group together. If you don't have a warlock, you should be looking for a warlock. If you don't have...
The only problem with that though is, again, if you're in a flex raid setting, you're literally handicapping those that prefer to run with a smaller crew of people by virtue of saying that, yeah, we want to have all the classes wanting to be representative, because in a flex raid setting, it's okay because you can go all the way up to 30 people. So that makes it okay that we give each class like such big benefits and whatnot. So therefore, as a guild leader, you might be going, cool, hi, we're doing our AOTC, let's go, just form up our group. Okay, our 10 core unit of awesome friends that just want to raid together will get dramatically more benefit out of getting in the other. What's up, Oki? How you doing, man? Will get dramatically more benefit of either bringing people that aren't a part of their crew or pugging some slots or whatever, just so they can get this perfect fantasy balance. Like, they shouldn't handicap smaller crews for flex raids, whereas this 100% would do that, in my opinion. But I don't know how they can balance it, but
which is the meta range spec.
Like, it's a bit shit of me saying, hey, that's going to be wrong, and then offering no solution whatsoever. But yeah, I'm very hesitant about like diving into the concept that, yeah, we want classes to mean something and be, you know, rah. Because the moment I think, like, every other MMO that I know of, smaller raid sizes just feels better. A lot of people really like it. It just works better for the game. And I do agree with Max when he says, with how the specs are at the moment, it feels like 20-man is like the good fit, because there's 36 specs and everything. Like, you get good coverage in terms of that, because you really don't play a class anymore. You definitely play a spec. Like, they all changed that dramatically, that, yeah, you don't identify as, I'm a warrior and then I'll flex to whatever specs you want. Granted, most people actually do, you know, as a warrior. I mean, if arms was that vastly superior, of course I'll just play arms instead of fury. But fury still pulls its weight perfectly fine, and I prefer it over arms at the moment because it's a nice fast-paced gameplay. Cool, I'm going to play fury. Whereas if fury was literal actual dog trash, and if arms is the only way to go, of course, most people will probably flex within their class of what spec they'll play. But yeah, I don't know. I don't like a world where they really want to push for every class to have some unique buff, and therefore that means, as a leader, if you're in a normal or a heroic raiding guild that has that flex option, you're just naturally encouraged to get more people in on your flex, and you might be a group that just prefers to play with a smaller group of people. I don't know, that's just me.
Let me just bring 5 of them and we're good to go. That helps provide social opportunities for the full range of players. Now, that said, we want to make sure that none of these buffs feels too impactful to the point that it's like you can't go without it.
That's a hard balance to hit, though.
At multiple levels of play, not just, you know, the top tier level.
The only thing I don't like about this part of the interview is they keep talking about buffs, and I don't actually think the issue is with buffs too much. Granted, it's definitely well worth discussing. That needs to be looked at. You definitely want to get certain buffs and debuffs that a class brings, because obviously it's not just buffs. It's not like, battle shout, and therefore no one else has battle shout, so it's too bad, so sad, or whatever the case is. It's fun. It's not just buffs. It's obviously debuffs. Things like your Havoc, spell damage increase. Soon to be poisons. I think there's a rogue poison coming in Dragonflight. That's going to be some debuff on the boss that will help you do more shit. Yeah, it's buffs, it's debuffs, and then the one thing that they just don't seem to be talking about at all, which is probably the most needed homogenization. As much as I don't want every class to get it, more classes need to have access to it, is the utility skills that either fucking make or break a fight or have literally no relevance in the fight whatsoever. The biggest example everyone keeps bringing up is Death Grip at the moment. Death Grip on certain fights is obviously like, oh my god, it's amazing, and if you didn't have a Deathknight, you're just severely hindered. Whereas some other fights, obviously Death Grip is literally never pressed once, and you go, okay. But little example like a Death Grip, just, yeah. And given the fact you can pull out your ass an example of why every single possible, like even a shaman, lightning lasso, cool. You lasso the dude and yank him in with some lightning whip. Cool, done. I've just thematically come up with a reason to have Death Grip for shamans. You know what I mean? Homogenization needs to happen with actual utility skills as well, not just the buffs that they keep talking about. Because every discussion that they've had so far on like, this whole player versus bring the class situation is just on buffs, and buffs isn't the point.
In that case, we want to look at things like tuning, we want to look at things like alternate buff items that can provide a substitute.
I hate that. I hate that so much. I don't know why, and maybe it just feels like I'm being a whiny little bitch. I'm perfectly happy to admit that. But for some reason, I just don't like items that's like, it's fine, we don't have a lasso, I'm just gonna drums and oh dude, I hate that shit so much. Like, it's super annoying. But also, if it is a thing, you have to do it. Imagine doing a Mythic Plus and you didn't have lust, but you were able to just bring of course you bring the fucking drums. It's like obvious. That's what everyone did back in the day, but I just hate that we have to. Because I think most people, when it comes to buffs, are willing to do whatever it takes to get certain ones, whereas they're probably not willing to do 16 hours of split runs to be competitive in Mythic, progression. Of course not. But little things like having the buffs, and then just the thought of having bags with like int buff, warrior shout, fucking drums, this, that, or whatever we don't happen to have in our 5-man Mythic Plus group or in this particular raid. I've got a scroll for it. And then again, they're not fucking talking about buffs because they're neglecting utility, and we're never going to have an example where scroll of Death Grip, cool, one use Death Grip on a fucking chanted scroll. Of course not. But these are the things, like, you can't just have a scroll of lock rocks or a scroll of summon people. I mean, you could. The summon thing's probably more relevant than anything else, but yeah, you know what I mean? I hate those extra items.
Or just increasing availability. I think the two most classic ones in this space are, Bloodlust, Battle Res. I think no group at any level is going to go without them.
Yeah.
The percentage of classes that brings those buffs.
What raid composition would need to exist for there not to be a Bloodlust? Or heroism or whatever. So you can't have a BM Hunter, you can't have a Mage, and you can't have a Shaman. And I think that's it. I think there's one more actually. Oh, that's right. They said the 4th one's coming with Evoker, so that's not relevant right now. That is insane to me, to think that if you just didn't have a Mage, didn't have a Shaman, or didn't have a Hunter that's going to go BM, which right now the whole don't go BM thing is super relevant. Like, not everyone's really touching BM right now. just a shaman or a mage. Yeah, I think they're the only ones off the top of my head. That's insane, dude. There is definitely a raid group out there that exists that don't have a shaman or a mage. Like some little Billy Bob and Joe group of 10 people or 20 people in normals or heroics that are just missing out on literally the most influential raid buff. Yeah, crazy. Weird.
Naturally over the years. That's something we're looking to change. So a little scoop for you.
I'll just hit
you'll probably see this in the next beta build, or next alpha build rather. Evokers will bring Bloodlust, so we'll have a 4th Lust class in the mix.
Smart.
We're also looking at.
We already knew this, but yeah, smart. I just stand by that.
Paladins, likely paladins, but don't like 100% quote me on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That means that there's another class in the potential to get one. Which, who doesn't have it? That's a healer. Obviously, it would be dumb to just assume a healer because, again, DKs can do it. But if it wasn't Paladin, it could be Priest and it could be Monk. Resto Druids already have it. And Warlocks can do it and DKs. But it doesn't have to be healer here or Resto Shamans, obviously. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the other ones could be. But the sheer fact that he said it's probably going to be Paladins. But don't quite right. You know they've got 1 or 2 other on the table, and I would love to know what those other ones are for a battle res.
Yep. And then for the rest, like we want to take.
I want to see a rogue battle res, like a shiv, a fucking poison thing to get a battle res. That'd be sick. Like where you literally run up to an ally and just fucking shank him, and like just kickstarts his heart back into gear or some shit. That would be cool.
Step back and look at the whole ecosystem now that we
obviously never gonna happen because then a rogue has to lose DPS uptime to go save a dude and then like run back, whereas obviously everyone else just casts it right now. Yeah.
The space of individual buffs like on the class level, we don't want to close that door and say no, we're not doing this, but it's absolutely possible that when you take all 38 specs in their totality, there's just too much of this now. We're too close to the Burning Crusade space, at which point over the next month we'll want to pull back on some of those.
Okay.
But,
yeah.
All right, yeah. So actually, I will have a follow-up question on that because that was actually, first of all, that was an amazing answer. Thank you for that. But
no way, Max is wearing the same shirt that I think Asmongold has. Doesn't he have that same? Oh no, that was Army, wasn't it? Never mind. I'll shut the fuck up. I'm an idiot.
So when you talk about like a scenario where, okay, if you are trying to play optimally, you maybe will want to have one of every spec. I think there's a couple of polarizing versions of raid utility right now that I kind of want to hear your opinion on. So currently, I think of the, how many classes are there now? Is it 13 with Evokers?
Yep.
Okay, with 13 classes, I think 10 have ones where they have either an hour-long raid buff that is basically irreplaceable, or are in some way bringing them to raid. Like for example, Warlocks don't have them, but if you've been around, gateways, hellstones, summons, wipe recovery, all those things are extremely powerful, and you need one of those classes. How do you look at abilities like DK's Death Grip, where it's not a class you need to have in the raid every pull, but if there is a raid boss or a dungeon or something that requires grips, that is as important or more important than that. So how do you balance between classes that just
completely agree
that puts them in the raid versus classes that have such strong situational utility where they're needed immensely for small things but not for every boss?
Yeah, I imagine it must be difficult to go buffs are tangible across every space, right? Every single encounter, every single thing you ever do ever in whether it's Mythic Plus or PvP or fucking raiding or even open world, buffs are going to be everywhere, right? Across the entire spectrum of the game. But he is right, when it comes to utilities, how do you manage, we can just homogenize buffs versus, this one either super niche or literally mandatory skill. Again, Death Grip's never been mandatory, but it's such a game changer. And again, the whole point is if you're trying to min-max a little bit and try and get some sort of efficacy based on your heroic AOTC progression or even mythic progression, obviously beyond that, yeah, of course you're going to bring a DK for that particular fight. Just dramatically favors having a DK.
So you're asking us to nerf Death Grip, in other words? No,
that's the opposite of what I'm saying.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Honestly, carefully. Like needed is the thing that shouldn't be something that we're building in encounters, certainly on non-mythic difficulty.
This is where I start to kind of go, okay, like I touched on earlier in the video, we're at a point where surely they're sort of running, like, it's really bizarre every time you go into a raid encounter and you're trying to teach someone and you're like, oh, this mechanic's just like that other one. Do you guys remember back in Legion, the second boss, and you did the thing? Like, I don't think there's a single fucking raid encounter in World of Warcraft that doesn't have that be a thing, where we go in and someone's teaching you, or you're watching on the video and they go, oh yeah, it's just like that other mechanic from that other boss that they've already done. And you're just like, oh, okay, I guess. Like, there's examples of that that's not true. Things like Fate's Grab, for example. I don't think I've ever seen a weird rune circular prismy thing that's that cool. And in terms of a concept, yeah, that mechanic's really fun, actually. Yes, it's a pain in the ass, but I think it's a really cool designed fight. But yeah, like, when we're coming to raid encounters that 90% of the time feel like rehashed versions of other raid encounters that have already been done, giving access to weird, quirky extra abilities and extra interactions into a game space field is going to naturally lead to more mechanics that you can make to make cool fights. Whereas by limiting that and going, oh, we don't want Death Grip to feel too impactful, so we're going to avoid the mechanics that would play into that and just stick to our lane, so to speak, then you're just setting yourself up for failure further down the line. It's like the hidden gotcha, bite you in the ass mechanic of, you know, you're limiting yourself so much by avoiding these no danger, no-go zones, when the easier option, in my opinion, is literally to just give a little bit more access to that one weird, quirky utility skill, and that just naturally opens the door to better mechanics and better fights and different cool shit you can do.
Like, if having knockbacks, having death grip, having a certain tool makes your life a bit easier in normal and heroic, great. And again, like, pug leaders especially, pug leaders are encouraged to, you know, it's flex raid for a reason. Look for a Deathknight. There's a ton out there who are actively looking for groups. Get one in, it'll help you. Philosophically, like, we talk about normal versus heroic. I think part of the difference there, like, a normal group, normal mode is pugs, but also just really casual friends and family groups that are just there to play with each other. They're not looking to bring strangers into their group. They're not necessarily looking to, like, recruit to get a certain class or re-roll. We want to make sure that at that difficulty, you can succeed regardless. You can succeed with a very suboptimal comp as long as you have the basics covered. At heroic level, like, to some extent...
Another reason why I want LFR and normal to just merge and either make it so you can run into the normal group with your collective group that you want to stay as a collective group, but also make it curable. 100%. I'd love to see LFR and normal merge. Like, I just don't understand. Like, pretty please. 4 difficulties is just dumb.
The difference there, even if you're not, like, cutting edge mythic, you still, there's some challenge, there's some coordination, you care about success. You're not going to bring along a person who's doing 50% less damage than everybody else if you're failing to meet a DPS check. And so in that space, bringing in classes that can help you is useful. If it's ever literally impossible, then we're going to probably make mechanical changes to the encounter. We're going to give you more time, we're going to, you know, make a cast interruptible. We'll do something there so it's like, it's not just ridiculously punishing if you don't have that specific class. Honestly though, like, things like Death Grip, we would like more of those, because it's so cool, because it's more than just 5% damage or whatever passive buff. It lets you shape your strategy, and I think lets the player who is the
like plenty of types of people that like LFR being there.
Instead of having to run out and do some utility at the expense.
Yeah. What does LFR serve in terms of a purpose though? Maybe you just don't see it because they probably stick to themselves or whatever the case may be. But I feel like barely anyone does normal. Normal is either a very limited short scope of time as the stepping stone into heroic, or they don't touch it and so it's just there for a curable version of normal. I used to think your way, but I've changed. Yeah, I mean, I'm open to it. I might be wrong. It's showing the story. Okay. I don't know if I'm still not there yet. I'm still in the camp of the story being shown in Raid is like so minimal. Like, so much more of the story is done in the open world settings and like phasing technology and that progression of a story loop, that I don't think the lack of clearing a raid or even stepping foot into a raid has any impact on the story, honestly. I agree that there's a large portion of people. I just don't agree that it's in an environment that they should completely be segregated out to their own little queue and their own like difficulty level. That has no bearing on the like why you'd need an extra separated section for it. I'm just trying to think. It depends how much of a jump up in normal the difficulty is, I suppose. Because if there's really genuinely quite a significant feeling, ooh, okay, LFR to normal is like a bit of a jump, and then normal to heroic is, oh, yep, now we've gone up another threshold, then maybe 4 covers the bases the best. But I don't know, I just feel like normal and LFR just would difficulty wise be the same, and the only impact that it's doing is allowing people to just queue up. But in saying that, having done the LFR yesterday on the Demon Hunter, was it, or the Rogue, whichever I did it on, DK maybe, yeah, LFR's super, like, you can just literally stand in the middle of the fire and you're just burning constantly, and it's like, oh, you should get out of the fire, but you just don't take damage. Whereas I know that wouldn't be a fact in a thing in normal, so you might be right. I don't know, maybe it should just stay in there. Maybe I'm just being weird. I just don't like the 4 difficulties. I think it's too much. But maybe it's necessary. I don't know. I don't buy into the story thing though. I'm still not there yet on the story side of things. Yeah, I just think it has such a minimal impact. Whereas, yeah, LFR for the difficulty, maybe because I haven't done normal, I'm probably downplaying the jump and therefore going, oh, LFR is basically just normal, but you can queue. Whereas it's probably not. It's probably a bit of a jump up. Probably 1,000 more reasons I think of, because I don't like that life. Have you heard the most from viewers? I have heard that the most from viewers. The story reason. Yeah, I feel like that was the thing back in the day of why LFR was introduced. You might be right though. I'm just trying to think. Okay, let's encompass everything that was Sepulchre and Zereth Mortis, and doing the storyline and like learning the different stuff. Like the Sepulchre story, the Zereth Mortis storyline continues after you've beaten the jailer in terms of the story progress. There's more after the whole jailer's dead now thing, and so you obviously finish off the story as you know it. And I suppose if you don't get that aspect of doing, you might be right. I feel like the only reason why it might be easier to come to that conclusion is because the story's shit. Again, personal opinion, but maybe if the Dragonflight storyline was so amazing and it was so cool, and you're like, oh my god, the zone things and the new ground things, and remember that guy from back then, and oh, he's in the raid now and this happens, no way, oh my god, it's Pog. And then someone just didn't get a massive segment or massive slice out of that, then you might actually be right, to be fair. Yeah, maybe I should just sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up. I don't know. I just still don't like full raid difficulties. Surely there was a way that you could balance it, but maybe that is the better option. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting.
These DKs are wild, but yeah, I was more kind of along the lines of like implying like, I think it's hunters, DKs, and shamans, I believe, that are the only class in the game basically that has situational fight utility instead of just they have something that makes them in all the time. So I was kind of just saying like maybe if you did actually want...
Yeah, that's another one that's along the lines of DK grip, like the turtle stance. Just being able to completely invuln shit is just like actually nutty, and it's so good on some fights, and then obviously literally never used on others. Most stories in the raid, that has the greatest change to the story. You reckon? I'm trying to think even back as far as the end bosses. Yeah, I get it, but the sad reality is 99% of bosses, of course you kill them. Like, they've made an encounter with a raid with bosses in it. Do you think that the end boss dying is not just what of course everyone would think is going to happen and he dies, and then once in a blue moon there'll be the, oh, we didn't actually kill him, and then this happened, and whoa, crazy. Like obviously you don't kill Sylvanas in Sanctum, that's an example. So yeah, I think in those examples, yeah, of course the story, if you never did any of that. But then even the Zereth Mortis shit, the very first quest in Zereth Mortis shows you the cutscene of what happened in the raid from Sanctum. So I think there's definitely ways that they've done it, and they're doing it right now. Like Zereth Mortis has cutscenes you watch as a part of the story in the open world that is directly reflecting the story to refresh your memory or whatever the case is from previous raids that you were going through. So I don't know. Yeah. It's a hard conversation to have though. I think you're probably right. It's more of a I know friends who haven't even set foot. Really? That is interesting. That is genuinely pretty interesting. That there's probably a subset of people out there that are still just plotting away through. I wonder how big of a section that is of people in terms of overall player base. It's so hard to judge because, you know, data and numbers are king usually. It gives you a very, very clear and solid indication with certain things, but obviously is irrelevant in other things, and it would be silly to look at data for certain stuff. But little things like, all right, out of every possible player that plays on every single American server that has logged on in the last week, how many of those people that have logged on in the last week have done blah 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 zone, blah 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 zone, blah 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 zone, all the campaign, all the Core Theo campaign, all the Zereth Mortis campaign, raids, all the normal mode, all that, you know what I mean? It would be really interesting because that's numerical data across a large subset of people that is clearly just complete king in terms of showing trends. Might not always give the answer of why, but it gives you the answer of what, right? So I don't know, it's interesting, yeah. Streaming introduce you to players that are very different to me? Yeah, I think that's the benefit, right? Like yourself included, to being able to actually have a discussion like, oh, I think this, and then you're able to go, well, actually, no, I think this, and then that makes me go, oh, actually, maybe. You might be right in that aspect, and you know, you self-internalize and you can have a discussion about it. That's one thing that's powerful for streaming, I suppose.
Have at least one of these, so you have 8 spots, or sorry, 7 spots.
Not solely in skill or in time, but more in how they enjoy it and how they view their time. Yeah, that's true.
And then you have that, but currently there are, I think it's only, you're kind of trending in this direction, so maybe we haven't seen the full vision of it, but like there is still, I think, like 2 or 3 classes that don't have something that puts them in the raid all the time.
There's no right in any of this cover. That's true. That's true.
Ultimately, we are,
because everyone's correct answer is different, right? That's the whole point. So again, sort of similar. I guess it's the whole point of it is trying to minimize as much impact of doing a thing to other player bases while still giving everyone the piece of the pie. I mean, what I mean by that is a super hardcore rank 1 PvPer doesn't want a system or something that impacts every PvE player whatsoever, but makes their life happy. Of course you wouldn't do that, right? And just trying to find that balance, I suppose. Yeah, it's too widespread. Yeah, big true.
Across, you know, just what the actual stats are. We want to have a good, something we feel is a good idea, something that's elegant, that's not, you know, it's easy to say, okay, this class has nothing, they get some new passive 3% stat buff, now everyone has to. But that feels like a cop-out, so it's like,
I'd agree, yeah.
If there's a representation problem that we need to solve and we're coming up with a good idea, we want to move in that general direction, but, you know, not at the expense of elegant design.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, I'm glad they came up with that analogy, because, yeah, you don't want to just go, oh, well, blah, blah, blah spec or blah, blah, blah class doesn't have XYZ. And is currently providing very minimal amount of cool shit to bring in uniqueness. So therefore, we're just going to give them this silly buff that's all of a sudden turned into a must-have because no one else has this particular debuff or buff, and therefore they've just gone from a super loose, not really brought that often unless you're a good player, sort of a class or spec, to no, must have mandatory because it's the only source of this one particular debuff. Like that, that's just, yeah.
And actually, this is actually a question. I just wanted to bring something up on the note of like bringing classes to raids and make sure it's accessible. along something that's often forgot about when talking about the DK thing we talked about at the beginning of this interview, where it was the video you were watching was not about DKs, it was about melee representation in raids. And I want to say, since that video, you guys have actually done a very good job at that. This expansion so far, Sanctum and Sepulchre, as opposed to like the normal comp, you've been able to stack basically as much melee in both of those raids on every boss as much as possible, and that has not happened before previously in WoW. So whatever adjustments you guys made there, it didn't actually trivialize melee, which was my fear for it, and it did make them more accessible. So just thank you for that.
Cool. Thank you, and yeah, kudos to the encounter team. Really, I mean, it's something we talked about as an active goal. Like, how can we get ideal raid representation and melee versus range balance better representing our...
How many specs are melee and how many... I still say melee instead of melee. How many specs are melee versus how many are ranged? There's still more melee by a country mile, isn't there? I'm pretty sure there is. It allowed Blizzard to please everyone to try at least. Yeah, definitely. That's probably very true. Fell into borrowed power. Yeah. I mean, that's just it. It's always going to be an ebb and flow of trying different stuff, and then, you know, the balance between what might sound bad on paper but actually turns out good, or what sounds good on paper and actually turns out bad. Like,
class and do that without, like you said, just making the fights patchwork for melee. Because that was the traditional way back in the day of like, all right, these mechanics just don't target melee. Cool, they can just stand there and punch the boss for 5 minutes, but that's not a good experience for them either.
Yeah. And then just one more last...
I mean, sometimes it is.
So you did mention something about, you know, if you need to, you would potentially add them back, but just to specifically ask the... so if you feel like it's hard enough to get certain things in the game, you guys are not opposed to potentially bringing back the scrolls that existed in BFA, or potentially maybe not buffing Lust Drums back to what they are, because you just added another class that brings it, right?
I mean, I think we're open to it. I think part of the challenge there is also, when you think about where the scrolls are used, they're not just a raid consumable. They become, you know, a mandatory consumable for every dungeon situation, where by definition you're not going to have class representation because you can't. And then it also starts to turn into like, well, wait, so the thing that I bring as a warrior, as a druid, whatever, is like a 2% better version of this buff, where people don't have to spend gold on a consumable. Like, that just makes their contribution feel less cool. So ideally we would want to find...
I agree, and I think that's probably part and parcel of why I hate the consumables, is because, yeah, just the thought of doing Mythic Plus and having to have like a stash of just fucking every buff, so no matter what group you get slumped into, you've got all the other possible, but like, that's going to be so annoying, dude. Like, I do not want that world to exist.
Find, you know, a middle ground, whether maybe that's reducing the baseline power or otherwise tuning, so that it just still feels like, cool, we have this class, this is a benefit that we have,
sneezy boy.
The difference between having it and not isn't, you know, something that you can't overcome otherwise.
Okay, and just one more note that it just popped up to me. This expansion in Shadowlands, as opposed to before, you actually you have consumables you use.
I need tissues.
Of a raid fight that is actually in a much higher number.
I just hit the mic again.
So you have like the armor kits, you have the sharpening stones, the oils, that kind of stuff. Do you guys see that continuing into Dragonflight?
That's a good question. I think we've probably gone a bit too far there, and I think as we're nailing down, you know, finalizing professions for Dragonflight, want to take a step back and see what the sum total of that experience is. I think a lot of those examples that you gave were things that we did to...
I found the bringing back sharpening stones and things like that was cool. I was like, yeah, this is cool, and even now I still find it cool. But I'm also realizing and thinking to myself, it doesn't do anything. Like, the global impact of it having these, apart from that kind of cool feeling of going, oh, I'm applying my fucking shadow oil or whatever. The alternative is no one has it, and then it's just not a thing you do anymore. You either just mandatorily do it and have it, or you just don't. And everyone basically does it. So again, that's probably another thing that there's just a lot of busy work, right? I would be thinking about it. I would actually be fine if they got rid of the sharpening stones and stuff like that, because I don't really think it really adds much, to be perfectly honest.
Make blacksmiths and other workers frankly feel more relevant, feel like they had something that, other than the legendary crafting templates, they could sell that was part of the economy. Dragonflight is solving that problem on 5 other levels. So, a world where you need to apply 5 or 6 things,
yeah,
it makes each one of them less meaningful, and
it's just tedious.
The general economic burden of like doing runs, doing the content, probably gets to be higher than we want it to be.
Okay, so that's it for Raid. I just have a few more questions about Mythic Plus.
Sure.
So the Mythic Plus system in Dragonflight, kind of getting a sneak peek of it in Season 4. So I think it'll actually, probably be a lot better now that you've had a run at retuning some old raids, which has been really nice. The only thing that I could kind of think of as a potential downside is that what happens if, in Season 1, you run into one of your new Dragonflight dungeons that is just extremely good. It is like the key that people want to run, not because it's easy to time, it's just like this key is so very fun. You can think of a lot of people have different opinions of these, but like what that would be. It may sadden Mythic Plus players that they have an amazing dungeon and they don't get to play it for a long time. So basically, what I'm asking is, what's the balance of good versus new? And if anything, you might not be able to speak on this because it's kind of in the future, but like, do you have any plans for Season 3 or 4 of Mythic Plus? As at that point, you've kind of shown what you'll do in Season 1 and 2, right? You'll have 4 Dragonflight and 4 returning, maybe to bring back some old favorites.
Yes,
I think that is going to be an issue, right? Because 5 is highballing a bit. Let me just catch up. I would assume more like Vantis runes. Yeah, individually one person was massive impact, but 20 have it added 3 to 5% overall. 5 is highballing a bit. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. That's just it though. It's just such a significant. Wasn't. Yeah. I was gonna say it wasn't. Yeah, that makes more sense. The individual impact obviously is watered down over 20, but it also makes it like mandatory for 20, like sort of what you're touching on sort of thing. It highlights it perfectly, is because the reality is, imagine if all 20 people either decide to use shadow core oils and sharpening stones and all that stuff, or didn't, and they just didn't do it at all. Like, that's gotta not be nothing, right? Like, that would be a pretty substantial amount of loss, just purely based on whether or not people decided to apply shit to their weapons or not, is kind of nutty. Obviously, in chance, I'm not touching on just those extra, like, consumable application stuff on your weapons, and that's just bizarre, because it does make it sort of mandatory. Like, you're just dumb if you're not doing it. Like, there's no difference in saying, okay, this entire raid of 20 people, no floss, versus this other raid that all get to floss. Like, it's the same concept, right? Obviously, probably further extrapolated, but yeah, it's just nutty. As for the Mythic Plus thing, yeah, I'm very curious here, because the reality is, yeah, 4 Dragonflight dungeons, 4 old, then they get the new Dragonflight dungeons and another separate set of 4 old. Cool. In Season 3, kind of like, okay, well, I think the way they should do it is probably just do, okay, what were the greatest dungeons of the of Dragonflight out of the 8 that were done over 2 seasons, and then just get the 4 best ones and then put them in Season 3, and then yeah, I guess maybe do 4 more, or maybe 4 of the best dungeons of the old shit that they've done thus far that people really enjoyed, and then just make like a greatest hits sort of thing. But then they run into the trap of, you cannot then go in Season 4, okay, we've done the 4 best, now let's do the 4 worst Dragonflight dungeons. Obviously that's, no, you can't do that. That's insane. What's the other thing? I'm thinking back to like Wrath days, right? They made more dungeons. I remember it was like Forge of Souls and shit like that. I don't trust or believe that they're going to be able to bang out 4 additional dungeons in a particular patch when a new season starts. I think that's too unrealistic. Quite unrealistic, like quite heavily unrealistic, to be honest. Like 1 extra dungeon, maybe 2, I think is probably pretty expected, and I could see that. Whether that plays an impact in some way, shape or form, cool, that'll be great. I mean, we saw it with Hazzikostas, right? Cool, 2 new dungeons, happy days. It's part of the routine now, excellent. But having 4 new dungeons is just not something that I think would really happen. The whole mega dungeon aspect of it, I think is kind of cool. They seem to have a pretty good rhythm with it. I think Junkyard went well. Sorry, not Junkyard, but Mechagon on the whole went well. And I think Hazzikostas was pretty good as well. So I do see them, you know, doing the whole mega dungeon thing again, where it's an upper and a lower situation or whatever the case may be. But I just don't see a world where each patch or each season that starts new again, like season 3 and 4, we can expect to see 4 new dungeons. I just don't think that's doable. Maybe they'll have a season where the pool is less. Who knows? They may turn around and go 4 Dragonflight and 4 old in the season 1, and then 4 Dragonflight and 4 old in season 2, and then maybe season 3 will only have a pool of like 6 or 5 dungeons. I don't think that's smart, but hey, it's a fucking option, that's for sure. Especially if you had the greatest hits. Like, if you could pull out what is everyone's absolute all-time favorite top 5 dungeons for Mythic Plus across like everything from BFA onwards, that'll be really interesting to see what people decide, and then just have like this greatest hits of 5, no matter which key you get, you fucking live in the dream. So it'll be pretty interesting. Mythic Plus is grapefruit flask pot stuff. Yeah, stealth pots was a big one that I started thinking. Runes is annoying, but once you, that's what I need to do. I actually need to buy that perma rune from Zereth Mortis. I still have a few of the other ones which obviously do the same stat, but yeah, I need to actually remember to do that. Flasks, yeah, it's pretty typical, and I already had health food. Sorry, not health food, food though. But yeah, stealth pots and the runes were the big ones, and I was starting to go, oh shit. And then pots you're used to running anyway.
We definitely have room to revisit, maybe tweak or update, or just revisit as they were if everyone loves them, a dungeon later on in the season. I think season 2 is almost certainly going to be the other 4 Dragonflight dungeons.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Legacy ones.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I think, you know, one thing the structure does is also gives more room for us to potentially add all new dungeons over the course of an expansion. Something we would like to get back to doing more of. I think back in Legion, when we last did this, one of the quick challenges that we ran into was integrating a brand new dungeon into a pool of dungeons that the community had already mastered. Like when Cathedral Mythic Plus rolled out.
Oh, this is such a good point.
That was a super dead key for a long time, even more so with
well.
Yeah. Yep. And like, it wasn't actually like the challenges. It wasn't that they were. In some cases, they were actually harder. But like beyond that, it wasn't that they were that much harder. It's that you were comparing dungeon. The community had 1 week of.
Diff feel Mythic Plus helped to feel a void, I'm guessing is what you're trying to say, from heavy pushing critical players who in a raid tend to become toxic to a group then leave. Yeah, dude, raiding environment can still be super bad if you're not in a guild. And even then, let's be real, half the guilds out there are also super toxic as well. I find that Mythic Plus still has that as well though. I hate to say it, but alright, the only thing good about Mythic Plus is we're in an environment where only having 5 people to deal with just naturally means you can cultivate and curate a better team of people that's less likely to have someone that's an asshole. And so therefore you're probably gonna more often than not have a better time with the Mythic Plus group, because even long form you have a situation where you're going to make friends with all the good ones, the good eggs so to speak, where you can continue to keep running together, whereas trying to do that with 20 people is far more difficult. So you're just naturally going to have a worse experience by sheer volume of numbers as opposed to just a 5-man group for Mythic Plus. And I do actually, I again mentioned this earlier in the video before you rocked up, Oki, but I do envision the different pillars in terms of like what's the grandiose. Raiding is no longer the top tier and best and most predominant endgame PvE experience. I genuinely think Mythic Plus has well and truly surpassed raiding as like the primary PvE content pillar. I don't think they're equal. I don't think that rating is ahead. I think legitimately Mythic Plus is like the big daddy dick and rating is this little side thing that stems from so many different things. The fact that you can just farm your keys day in and day out. The fact that rating still has a lockout. The fact that Mythic rating has like restrictions in certain ways. Bosses aren't repeatable, like so many different things has really pushed Mythic Plus to literally be like this big massive PvE pillar. I have a rogue I only do raid with, yeah, nice. And I guarantee you his gear and everything, and a lock you only do key, yeah, the lock will be far superior by a country mile in so many different ways.
Of knowledge of to a dungeon they had been running, you know, for over a year. And
the shaman only do PvP.
Rewards in terms of what challenge they were supposed to offer. When we have all new pools, that's not an issue anymore. So I think as we
that is true.
The later season,
I completely agree. Any dungeons they do add can be done at a point where the whole dungeon feels different. So you're not going, oh yeah, Sanguine Depths, I've been doing this for 2 years, it's fine. But all of a sudden this Tazavesh one that comes in, you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing there. Which is fucking ironic, because the fact that they kept Tazavesh, that used to be the don't touch them because they're the new ones and we don't know what we're doing. Whereas now Tazavesh and the 2 Tazavesh dungeons, are like the, oh thank God I can fucking easily plus 20 this shit, and then all the other ones are the, I find that really hilarious. So Rogue is only the raids, Lock is the PV, the keys, and then your Shaman's the PvP. PvPs are gonna feel weird because PvP obviously is its own weird, unique blend. PvP is always going to be its own, and that actually reminds me, I do want to start PvPing more on my Warrior. The only problem is I don't really have anyone to PvP with, so like for 2s I'll need to find a healer and actually try and be good. But yeah, the fact that you've got a 292 hi, do you heal? I don't know, heal my Fury Warrior in 2s. Let's go, dude. Easy game. Your Shaman heals. Oh yeah, of course. You literally just said your Shaman PvP. Yeah, let's do it, dude. We'll have to do it sometime. Probably won't be tonight. Literally, I'm gonna finish up this video and then wrap up and yeah, get an early night. Spend a bit of time with the missus before she has to go to bed for school tomorrow. And then we'll be back on the Wednesday. I started stream a little bit earlier today, and I wanted to watch this video, so I figured we'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And I know no, you're naked at the moment, Gaffer. That's good. We'll keep it that way. That actually sounds even worse. Oh god, how do I get out of this situation?
Nah. New dungeons introduced. That actually.
But yeah, no. I mean, we've got each other on the friends list now, so I think. Did you add me? I don't know. But either way, we'll definitely PvP sometime. I'd like to. No meme. Actually, want to try and get some PvP rating.
About gear. So this gets brought up a lot, but I just kind of want to maybe phrase it in a little bit different way. So with Mythic Plus becoming more of an endgame avenue for people, is there a potential to add higher level loot acquisition for people who are doing top world level keys specifically? So like obviously rating and PvP
get damn straight
higher eye level, but a lot of people exclusively Mythic Plus. Basically, is there a Mythic Plus key level that exists where it is kind of the same thing as killing maybe the last 2 bosses on Mythic, even though obviously you don't have to, find 20 people to raid with, and then one is spammable for loot and one of them is a weekly lock?
Here's the weird thing, and this is purely based on my own experience. So these guys are obviously having their discussion of, oh, why can't the higher keys allow you to match the higher item level you're going to get from a raid if you did, super cutting edge, and the last couple bosses drop items that just give you that little bit of extra push, blah, blah, blah. While I get it and I agree, because obviously it's weird that, Mythic Plus players will only ever see the ceiling of 304, whereas obviously Mythic Raiders get the benefit of the 311. The dumb part is that 311 is like the only thing keeping raiding like relevant, like at all. It's so super dumb. Whereas from my perspective as an AOTC, sort of that middle range kind of thing, that's not against Mythic rating, by the way, but the likelihood of finding a Perth-based GMT plus Mythic guild, that's not one I've already tried to be in, or yeah, it's just going to be super difficult. That doesn't also raid to like dumb shit o'clock, depends. But either way, I'm happy with where I am. But yeah, from my perspective though, meanwhile, I'm the one sitting there going, dude, rating feels unrewarding as fuck. Whereas they're saying, oh, the 311's at Mythic, Mythic Plus deserves that as well. Whereas I'm sitting there saying Mythic Plus people have it so easy because I'm basically capstoned out at 291 and then I'm forced. I'm enjoying it, so I don't mind being forced, so it doesn't feel forced. But the reality is, in terms of gearing, speed-wise or otherwise, the missus has been rude. I'll be finishing up soon anyway. Yeah, your Shaman's on 282. You lied to me. You're a horrible person. But yeah, no. In that situation, I'm totally on board with Mythic Plus actually needs to be brought down a bit because 15s are too easy for getting 304 in the vault, and Mythics are too easy to get 288 gear from every end boss. I feel like, is it 288? I'm pretty sure it's 288. Granted, it's a little bit lower than Heroic, so maybe it's fine because Heroic get 291, but they just upgraded with Valor and it's like repeatable. It's, dude, Mythic Plus have it so much easier. But I will say that maybe if you can pull off a 20 or a 25, yeah, you probably deserve 311 gear. I think that's fair, honestly.
Yeah, all of that included. Just have you guys had any more thoughts on that?
I think there is a key level that exists. It's definitely a different key level for Lower Karazhan than Workshop, but...
Yeah.
That's the other thing. How the fucking world are you ever going to be able to balance, like, if you want 311 gear and your trinket of Biss trinket happens to drop from something like Workshop versus your trinket happens to drop from Lower Kara, how in fuck's name are you going to, like, figure out where that threshold is based on each unique individual dungeon? That's going to be hard. And then factor in, you got the affixes on top of that, and then suddenly you're going, okay, in 3 weeks time, that is the week that I need to push this really shitty dungeon to have the easiest possible time so I can get my Biss trinket at 311. And that's going to just feel a bit shitty. Because if you don't get it in that week, you're going to be fucking mad as shit. So I don't know how they're going to tailor that. That will require a lot of tuning.
You know, that's one of the challenges too. This spammability of it definitely is a factor. That's something we've grappled with when it comes to Mythic Plus loot since its introduction back in Legion. You know, because of how varied dungeon pools are, because of just the social factors of if someone's running a dungeon on a Saturday, we don't want people feeling like, well, I'm already locked for the week, or I've already maxed out on my loot for the week, so I don't want to run it with you. That's led us to every dungeon run gives you some loot, but of course balancing that against weekly throttled systems like, you know, just raids and PvP means that if it's too rewarding, we just completely killed raiding. And I would argue that, you know, one of the problems for not Mythic guilds so much, but normal and Heroic guilds right now, is the tension between raid rewards and Mythic Plus rewards.
Oh yeah, massively.
If you're in a group progressing through Heroic over the course of a season, but half of your raid is running 15s outside of raid time, you don't really need that raid loot anymore.
Yeah.
It increasingly causes division within the group even.
Yeah, 110%.
None of that is great. So anyway, all of that said, the direction...
Motherfucking Killchain, what's up, dude? How you going?
Specific changes to announce is, on the one hand, actually trying to, between tuning...
How did you manage to get any sleep, dude?
Bring the baseline down a little bit, or at least bring the baseline challenge up a little bit, so that there's more of a...
Yes, I do, because Max said anyone is allowed to stream this interview. I did check that beforehand.
At the same time, find ways to let Mythic Plus players...
He basically put out a blanket thing on his stream where he was watching his own video, and he literally said, for the record, before we get started, if you want to restream this or, like, you know, do your reacts or whatever, it's totally fine, because I view this interview as a public ownership from Twitch. No, why would you need permission from Twitch? I'm confused about that. If that's the case, then no. It's just a YouTube video. I'm not restreaming another stream. People watch YouTube videos all the time of different shit. Yeah, I know it's gonna be fun. It's just a re-upload on YouTube.
Reach the top of the mountain, like whether it's, you know, I don't know.
The only thing I'm not specifically doing is streaming on YouTube.
End boss quality loot.
A YouTube video.
We'd like to make them truly equal in that sense, but there's some problems to solve along the way.
Yeah, definitely. There's also, I think this season kind of showcased what can happen to the Heroic raid difficulty by having Mythic Plus available for, like, you uncapped Valor, for example, right? So if you just went hard enough and you farmed literally +2s and enough Valor, like anyone can do them, you can get full 298 gear, and you will not want any single drop out of Heroic, basically, except for
it goes up to 298. That's right.
Balancing to where, like,
when you max it out at 12 out of 12.
Okay, I haven't thought about like
no music in as well. Exactly right. That's the music was the other thing I was specifically worried about.
There's absolutely every bit as much.
That's why I paused my music, and the interview doesn't have any as well.
We should be rewarding that equally. We just have to find a way to do it.
Cool. All right. Well, that's actually we blazed through basically all the main stuff I wanted to talk about. I do have a few more questions about, like, class trees and dragon riding.
Sure.
So with how fun and successful dragon riding, for the few of us who've been able to actually try it yet, hopefully soon a lot more people get it in their hands. It is unbelievable. I think it like fully.
I can't wait to try dragon riding, man. It's gonna be so good.
Like just flying normally just feels
on release. On release, it's gonna be so bizarre. Like because you obviously have that new excitement of spamming. You know, oh my god, there's more levels. Talent trees. You probably be used to the talent trees by then. Because naturally we're going to have pre-patch with talent trees changes and stuff in it. So that less so. But that first really weird initial moment of being able to actually do proper dragon riding. And I would have turned around and said, oh, but that'll be fine because that's a pre-patch thing as well because Evoken can use Soar. But clearly Soar is going to be a gutted version of normal dragon riding. So it won't really feel the same as actual proper dragon riding. And yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be actually insane. Good day, Spitz. My question is, the dragons we have already, are they going to be able to dragon riding? Good point. I mean, can you mount Alexstrasza and take her for a little spin? I don't know. Probably not. What the fuck is sleep? Nah, dude. You like had a couple of hours. You're cooked. I actually started stream earlier today, specifically so to see if you were going to still be around. Plus, yeah, we've got shit early on in the morning with the swimming lessons and stuff like that anyway. So yeah, I was wrapping up with this video and then you ended up jumping up, so I was like, okay, because we've been streaming almost what is it now, let me open up this just shy of the 3. My concern is next expansion, after the Dragonflight we lose dragons, do we keep it forever? 1, great question. 2, legit, I'm actually insanely frustrated. You just woke up? Yeah, I figured as much. I wasn't sure whether I'd try and like snipe you in or whether, yeah, go a bit later. But we'll finish up this video, then I might finish up my last little tidbits of stuff and then I'll be finishing up for the night for myself anyway. So yeah, take that. But back to the question real quick. I think from what I've seen, and granted I haven't played it, so maybe I will touch it and go, what was everyone talking about? Dragon riding sucks. Could happen. Probably won't happen. I think it's going to be that demonstrably insanely good that they physically just won't be able to not have it again. It's going to feel so insanely shit going back to a normal mount after that. And the whole like, but we don't want to invalidate your old mounts. I'm still in the position right now and have yet to be convinced otherwise that that's irrelevant because people still farm fucking ground mounts and no one uses ground mounts anymore. Even in Ouroboros, I specifically try and always mount on my flying mount because the moment I go through the Zereth Mortis portal or anything like that, I fly straight away. So I don't want to have to mount and then swap over to the mounts. I don't always remember, but that's the reality, right? Like as soon as flying kicks in, you're just gonna fly. Like it's so dumb. So what's the point of making any ground mount ever drop again? Because blah 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 blah. It's borrowed power in a new form. I hope it's not. I genuinely hope it's not. And they've always talked about they want to try and provide longevity and stuff, right? It is, and you're right, but they did specifically point they want more evergreen systems, right? And so I view the profession changes, evergreen change, evergreen system, right? I view the new renown things, where as you go through each different patch or expansion or any new addition to the game, I think renown's going to be hanging around for a while. Evergreen system. So let's say 10.2 comes out and 10.2 has the new remember we were getting the underground leaks for a while. Yeah, okay, let's pretend Flamey McUndergrounderson 10.2 patch of whatever place we go to, Deep Home 2.0. Cool. Deep Home 2.0 will have a whole bunch of new renowned shit based on different people in there. 100%. I see the renowned system, evergreen change. Dragon riding I think fits the bill as well. I severely hope that they manage to pull it off ready for the next expansion, but even if it wasn't, it's going to be a thing again at some point. And I hope that some flying mounts they do add that in, where like griffins get certain abilities and blah blah blah. I also think that some mounts that just don't have wings, or whatever aspect you want to put it as, just won't get it to begin with. At least I think that's fun, purely because of the fact that people still collect all the different mounts and their collection isn't invalidated, because otherwise ground mounts would be having the exact same conversation about flying mounts, which didn't happen. So how many expansion has it been in Guild Wars 2? 3. How do the other mounts stack up against it? Okay, here's the thing with the whole Griffin thing, right? The problem is the Griffin is the tangible correlation to the dragon riding that everyone said, oh, wow, ripped the Griffin riding thing. The problem is every other mount has its own uses in certain scenarios. So because that all 6 mounts, I think it's 6, has a purpose in certain scenarios, while Griffin might be your primary one for just general travel, there's the limitations like the verticality. If there's not a high enough spot to start, you're not going to be able to really get going. And that's the exact same with dragon riding, right? Like you need a bit of verticality before you can really get your swoops going, and then you can maintain it, or whatever the case may be. But all the other mounts serve their purposes in various different things, like the Raptor's Leap, the Bunny's direct vertical jump up to be able to get up to the higher places. Then you get Sky Scale, which Sky Scale basically functions as what we know as the flying mount, where it goes up and down and moves back and forward. We purely control 110%, no flight mechanics involved. But there's only a certain amount of time, I believe, you can do it. And, the higher you go, the more your bar drains and stuff like that. But it's purely swim through the air functionality. And then the Griffin is the actual physics mechanics of, flying. That's the other thing as well. The fact that you have waypoints really does minimize long form travel, to be honest. You are correct in that. Whereas WoW obviously doesn't have any sort of waypointing system, which is weird because we live in a world where I think 99% of MMOs actually have some sort of quick travel system like that.
The system is
really weird.
Are there any thoughts or plans in the future to allow dragon riding in the open world, potentially some race content in old zones, stuff like that?
That's certainly one of those things we started talking about pretty quickly once initial alpha impressions came in. I think we built this system focused on Dragon Isles so that we really didn't have as many of the guardrails in designing it that we might have had if we were building it from day one as an evergreen game-wide system. A challenge here is also, not the specific mounts, the dragon ride we built to support dragon riding. We want to be very mindful of preserving players' investment and the usefulness of the hundreds of mounts that many people have collected. They've spent.
I just can't agree with that. Just from my personal thing, like I keep going back and harkening on about it. I get it, but just the sheer simple fact that ground mounts exist still, like people that are mount collectors and stuff are still going back and doing all those older relevant mounts. That might be ground mounts, might be flying mounts that they will literally never touch, but they just want to have their number go up from 507 mounts to 508 mounts. And so therefore, and there's no reason they can't still add them as collectibles, right? So you could have, hey, you're using dragon riding, and so as part of dragon riding you got gold on every single race that existed for dragon riding races, so therefore we're going to give you a normal mount as a reward to show that you kicked ass at dragon riding. And that would be fine, because even though you might not ever use the normal mount except for in old world or when they eventually make normal flying a thing, maybe if they do, I don't know, but the whole point is from a collecting standpoint, dude, the sheer fact that you just said it as well, the hundreds of mounts that everyone has collected, blah 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 blah, shows that they're not fucking using all those mounts, right? Like people have their 1 or 2 mounts that they've saved on the favorites, but 99% of all the collected mounts never get touched again. Whether they're ground mounts, fucking underwater mounts, flying mounts, doesn't matter. So, I don't know. Ian seems like, okay, come on with it, let me answer in all his interviews. Yeah, a little bit. He has that personality type, right?
Because they can't do all.
You use about 250 on favorites. Wait, okay, no. I can't even get into. You don't exist right now, Oki. You don't exist for the pure simple fact that you are such an anomaly that I am so confident in the fact that if there are other players like you, you guys make up like 0.0001% of the population that has more than 10 favorited mounts. Okay, yeah, exactly, yeah. Guarantee you are such an anomaly. I think most people will have around maybe 10 favorited mounts, maybe 20. But I mean, it is kind of cool to just have them randomly rotate, and then you're like, oh yeah, this mount, oh yeah, this mount. That would be cool. But I think the whole dragon riding thing does not invalidate mounts at all, and I would expect and hope that we still get the access to earn mounts, even though we might not ever use them because of dragon riding, throughout Dragonflight as an expansion. That's just me. Plus I play 80% of day as well as I play at night. Yeah, I wish I could play WoW all day. That would be so good. I'd be so much further in so many different things.
All the cool dragon riding stuff, that feels like a problem. All that said, like, yeah, when we introduce any one of these features, our hope is that it's awesome enough that people don't want to say goodbye to it, that we want to carry it forward, you know, for the rest of the game's future. And so far, this is looking to be landing in that space. So we're very happy about that.
You end up further away.
Recognize that when Dragonflight is behind us, when we're leaving the Dragon Isles,
no,
people are not going
to. That's going to be the dream, dude. If I can make it to 6 to 8 hours a day. I was very deep in all things. That's true, but nah, 6 to 8 hours a day. That's my dream. If I can turn this into the income support to warrant me playing it to 6 to 8 hours a day, then that's the dream. When I can turn around and go, oh, daddy's just at work, and I'm not full of shit. That would be great. Fuck that. Played all day the past 2 days and still ain't got the phone. No. All right, you can get salty about that, but I don't know what you've done. But if you're genuinely still only 2 out of 9 on your campaign, you have not done anything, because you've done the wrong quest or something. Because I know you still needed to level up, I get that, and I know you're restricted by renown, but renown should be so much easier to get through doing dungeons or whatever that I don't understand how you're still capped out. And that is rough, because you're in a weird situation where you're trying to condense everyone's natural just by playing the game every day over the course of weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, you blah blah blah. Whereas now you're just trying to condense it into, I need to go now. Fucked up, I have the right amount of renown. Oh, okay. So if renown's not the thing that's cucking you, then yeah, 2 out of 9 is just Torghast, dude. Like, you should 110% be able to do the next campaign quest. And Torghast is what you skip. You go to the Sanctum, you do your first couple of tours, and you say skip tour, and then it tells you go back to Oribos to speak to Flamey McDeath, current Lich King man. I can't remember his name. And then he lets you skip Torghast, and that's it. That's 2 out of 9, done. And then you start on from the rest of them from there. I know he can't get the 60 renown skip, shouldn't be an issue. My renown is 55. Yeah, you're basically there. You're over the 44 renown that is required to get flying in Shadowlands. Because 44 is what you need to be able to buy the item, to obtain the item and get your progress in the Korthia zones once you finally get Korthia. But you can't go to Korthia until you fully do your normal campaign, whether it's Venthyr or... Also, don't sit there swapping covenants, obviously. Whatever covenant you are, stick with that until you've got your flying, because that will reset you as well, which is dumb.
At a static speed through the sky mounts, and so we want to have a solution when we get there.
You may not be able to skip. Fair. Good point.
See, I have 2 I'm trying to
but even still, even if you can't skip, the second quest for Torghast is like, do Torghast once, just to free the dude, and after 5 levels. And then, yeah, the first 2 campaign quests should easily be doable literally within an hour. Maybe hour and a half tops. Then you should be on quest 3 and so on.
Was something that is a little better. So far the class trees have been excellent. The best ones give you things you haven't had before. They give you choice. being able, maybe not even adding things you're getting, but necessarily just dropping.
Another really cool thing that I'm pretty sure was announced, I remember reading on Wowhead, the fact that we can change talents and do the loadouts anywhere is huge, dude. It's going to make life so much easier. Being able to like min-max a bunch of loadouts and go, cool, this is my Mythic Plus, this is my rating, this is my AoE rating, like for ad cleave, and this is like a pure single target, and then a PvP and beyond and whatever you need. So helpful. So helpful. And the fact that you don't need to be in a resting spot, it's going to make life so much easier. It also means that tomes obviously don't exist anymore, which I think is fine. Like, I hate having to carry around tomes, but the fact that we have the loadouts will be very helpful when we also don't need to tome anymore.
Things you don't maybe need for a specific encounter to give you a passive or another thing that will make you more powerful in what you're doing. This has been achieved through most of the specs in the game, but the feedback has been a little varied. So we've had, some specs get feedback every Friday for this entire patch so far with great changes. There's been other classes that didn't have posts for a month, but then just got this massive dump of information that was clearly being worked on the whole time, with excellent changes, speaking about DK specifically. And then some other classes have had less updates. Basically, just asking, like, can there be a more standardized level of feedback between all the classes? And how has that been going for you guys?
I don't know, but I feel like Warrior sort of sits in the middle. Like, we didn't really obviously hear anything until our time for our class came. And then since then, we've been getting pretty consistent feedback, honestly. So that's fun. I'm happy with that, to be fair. I just want to get my hands on it, man. It'll be so good to actually get a feel for Fury. And even play with Arms and Prot, to be honest, because Prot looks really fucking fun. And Arms does look pretty nutty. Like, there's some pretty cool different synergies that we didn't have access to before that are going to be very fun to play with. I don't know anything you all said. I lost internet here at the house. Oh, dude. This is a sign of good chance in the game. More large content creators are much happier overall. Definitely. So many specs, 36. Yeah, it's just a lot to obviously go through.
Druids and priests, we hear you. We're gonna have information soon. Apologies for the silence. I know.
Yeah, 2 more with the
record. And you rightly expect better. Ideally, yes, we would have had, just more even-handed communication across the board. The challenge is, it's, I know billion-dollar company and all, but at the end of the day, it's also a number of humans who can all just fit in one room together, who are handling both
billion-dollar company
side of it and the community communication side.
Billion-dollar company, by the way.
Life happens. That results in gaps along the way.
No way you can have 38 teams. Exactly. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, Tal said he loved it compared to Shadowlands. Was a huge upgrade. That's good. Yeah, just a lot of the feedback's obviously really good, and especially when we had a situation. Who was it that said? Someone else said it. I don't know if it was earlier on in this interview or the other day, or I can't even remember when. Like, was it in the last 12 hours or was it in like the last week? I can't remember. But someone somewhere along the way said, if we're in a situation, it was like a comment that someone left on a stream or something. But if we're in a situation where the biggest gripe people are having with, alpha is, what was it in regards to? It was something really dumb. It might have even been a Tally video I was watching earlier today. But yeah, if someone's biggest issue with alpha was something super small and like that's the biggest uproar that everyone's having about the game, then we're in a really fucking good spot. And I can't remember what the bitching was about. Damn it, it's gonna do my head in. Because yeah, someone basically made that comment that alphas and everything that we've seen so far is just dramatically better than where we were, for example, with BFA, where there was clearly glaring issues left, right and center, and we're talking about it the longest time, and we basically get told it's fine. Or trust, or Shadowlands as a prime example again.
Get back to it. And so it's stuff like that. I know sometimes
Tally said that in his interview. Yeah, I remember someone somewhere along the way saying it. I thought it might have actually been a Tally video.
We don't have anything right now. We're working on it. We're going to have news for you in a couple of weeks, as opposed to just radio silence. And I think we all need to collectively work to get better at ever having the radio silence situation going on. People are just waiting for news.
Excellent. Okay, and I think I have time for one more question. So first of all, that's excellent. And I don't even know if I need to enter with a question. The question isn't even that good. I just want to point out that you guys have the right idea with class trees. The ones being done at their best, and you've seen over time, the ones that were a bit more problematic have have obviously been a deep amount of collaboration there, and they have seen the things that have worked in other trees and moved on to others. So far, I think the fact that some of them at their very best show an unbelievable form of content, I think all of us are just really happy to see it, and just hope that all the classes kind of end up turning around with the same, because I know it's gonna be a long
and
road,
I give Mass credit too. Yeah.
Posts. You're getting into
it must be really hard being the guy
like you've added a bunch of new capsules,
coming on.
You're going to need to make sure that they all.
I wouldn't want his job right now. That's just
before they need to really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to brave the community that isn't WoW fucking fans.
Right? That's going to mean replacing some talents, redesigning some things that just aren't working. But we obviously needed to get the broad foundations out there. Looking forward to raid testing, Mythic Plus, endgames, seeing people actually using these builds in different situations, and moving beyond theory crafting to playing with them. And that's the only thing that's ahead of us. And frankly,
yeah, exactly.
That's actually
not throw them under the bus or anything, accidentally or otherwise.
We still had 4 different systems to implement. It was like, cool.
He makes the money for it. Fair enough.
Torghast powers. Here, okay, we have our first pass the talent trees done. 100% of the team's time is going to be focused on listening, responding, iterating, and then tuning.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
I have one super quick question for you. Just wanted to seed this as a question.
This is what we've all heard thus far.
How do you guys feel about simultaneous normal, heroic, mythic release as a thing in, let's say, hypothetical future tiers?
I think, for me personally, okay, so I haven't had any time to think.
I love how much Max actually got thrown off by that question. And like, yeah, the chat in his chat is obviously just popping off like the full like global release. Oh my god, no way. All right, let's actually spend a bit of time actually thinking about what this will mean. So world first guilds won't be splitting, or at least won't be for the longest time, because I think it would run too much of a risk to sacrifice. Actually, maybe that's the play. If you can guarantee that in one lockout, it's not realistic that a world first group will get the full clear, then I suppose they're still gonna do split runs for that entire first lockout and just kind of rush it, right? So they'll do heaps of split runs for that first lockout, do whatever they can, and that's the risk, right? So let's pretend in a magical world, I'm just gonna say Echo and Limit. So let's say, because Method doesn't really exist anymore, let's be real. I mean, they do, but I feel like Echo and Limit are the two to discuss about. All right. Echo, we're playing make-believe right now. So Echo decides we're going to bum rush it. We're going to try and get the proggers during the raid release when Heroic and Normal obviously out at the same time. And Limit's over here, and Limit decides, no, we're going to sacrifice all mythic progression. I don't think Echo's going to be able to kill the full end of it. So yes, they're going to get the first 6 bosses done, and we're going to miss out on the world first 6. But the whole point is you want the end full clear. That's what world first is. Cool. So they try and do mythic. The other group tries to do heaps and heaps of heroic split runs and all that jazz, and basically gears up. Next lockout rolls around. Limit is literally going to slingshot ahead and be able to probably clear it, right? Or at least get further and play a lot more catch up by having done the split runs. So therefore, the following scenario would then lead itself to either be, do all the top guilds then just communicate with each other and decide, hey, we're collectively just gonna agree, let's do this splits for the first week, and then we'll start that means it's a player driven decision to only push mythic when they are ready and when they want to. Or are they going to try and rush it and kind of go, oh yeah, we'll do it, and then they just try and get ahead of them anyway? Like, there's so many different factors that play into it, but I feel like global release of mythic at the same time, it's only a benefit for everyone else in the game, and I actually feel like it's not going to have any impact on mythic rating, because I genuinely believe it is 99% likely that they probably won't get it within the first raid lockout. So yeah, because of that, they're just going to be split running anyway. Whereas everyone else gets to at least kind of jump into Mythic for maybe the first boss or two. And it's just going to help a better release for them, in my opinion. I don't know. Let's catch up on chat real quick. Apart from unrealistic goals, but you know his past, who cares about this game? Yeah, that's true. I'd love to have a year of his salary. Well, we don't know what his salary is, but dude, I'd just love to have a year of his salary. A salary. That's funny. It's not about making money, but he's part of the company. Directors want him to make. Yeah. I think you can definitely tell, bottom line, his passion's there. I generally can hand on heart say you can't say that he doesn't deeply care and deeply think about the game. Net worth is guessed at 20 mil. Jesus, dude. Wow. I just magically made 100 grand a month. 100 grand a month. 100 grand a year. That's like, holy shit, I'm living the dream. Whereas 20 mil, damn, that's just way more than people realize. Probably, yeah. Like, that's actually just insane. I don't even like, it's why he braves the community. I mean, dude, you give me 20 mil, I'll go out in front of any community. I don't give a shit. I'll flop my dick out in the stream. Let's go.
Think about this, but something that I think is an issue is like one thing you guys have done some things to mitigate in the past is you've like had to reduce what crazy things we would do during heroic when like mythic first comes out. But the reality is that's because we have an entire week to do degenerate things. If mythic is out, that really solves a lot of the decision making. You'd be doing a lot of things when mythic is out, but I mean, that is a massive source of information. I don't know. That's very overwhelming. I would need to figure that out.
Yeah,
but
no.
Chat
and to be clear, I'm super I'm not genuinely not announcing anything there.
Yeah.
We're just trying to figure out, I mean, there's holidays coming up, there's stuff going on.
That's right. This is the part where everyone was like, oh, there's holidays coming up. That means, it must be before the holidays. Because, they're trying to plan release. And then late November is obviously the working theory in terms of release, which, yeah. I saw that on, I think, Asmongold clips shit, so, yeah. I don't know. I think my scenario is correct. I don't believe there won't at least be a major discussion behind can you get away with that first lockout, because trusting that the other guild's competition is not going to clear the thing, in which case you can just entirely ignore the entire mythic lockout for that first week, knowing that, it also depends how quickly you can get your dudes up to max level, right? And where like a lot of your BIS shit is, because we're not even, like, let's say that all releases 2 weeks in, everyone will be max level, but there's nothing else there except mythic zeros, right? So they're already splitting for heaps of mythic zero shit by the time that this global release of normal, and it depends how many weeks afterwards it comes out as well. I don't know, there's so many factors to go into it, but I do believe that it will just stop heroic split runs. Actually, no, I do believe that it won't stop heroic split runs, because I don't think an entire raid, no, because you'll be splitting heaps of mythic zeros, but you can split the mythic zeros, but there is the lockout, so you can't just spam it. So yeah, I don't know, I'd still just split the mythic zeros, I think that's pretty standard. I don't know, there's so many factors to... He also sits on the board and can nix anything, and the card doesn't even. That's like actually heckers. Alright, let's finish this so we can finish up.
Think through how our
wanted to end on watching this video.
Community feedback always helps.
I think it'd be, I'm not positive, but I think it would be worth a shot, especially with, like the potential timing. So yeah, I think I'm so much at once, but I'm almost positive that it's a good thing. But I would need to like actually.
It was such a good left field question as well.
Yeah,
just completely like, yeah.
That's very cool. And thank you so much for the answers. That was deeply insightful. I love hearing you talk about WoW. I'm very passionate about it, and very clearly you are too. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you very much, and look forward to doing it again.
All right, thanks, man.
Nice.